Okay, so in Price, there's a lot of things that she does to set this data frame up for you. So you want to make sure that you make a copy of this, because if you corrupt this MXD, it's really difficult to get back to this spot again unless you just grab a copy of the MXD from the lab. But basically, I'm going to turn on list by source because my data is in the R drive, and that's where I'm pulling it from. And she has set up all of your symbolization. She has also set up a default, let me move this over a bit, so that you're only seeing, Oregon and Washington. However, all of the data is actually still here, but she has a definition that only lets you see Oregon and Washington. So anyway, I'm going to open up the table of contents layer hazards and look at the properties. It tells me that the coordinate system is North American equidistance conic, and I can look at the projection of all the other layers. So the volcanoes layer is the same projection, the rivers layer is the same projection. So everything is the same projection. In the properties, I can change that projection to something completely unsuitable by going to predefined, projected layers. I'm going to just pick a world layer, and let's pick the mall-wide. And so there is Oregon at a pretty inappropriate projection for Oregon. And what's interesting is if I look at the properties, it tells me that the table of contents is in this projection, but it hasn't actually changed the projection of the data. The data is still in the original projection. Okay? So that's projecting on the fly. If I want to get the volcano data, let's do something more dramatic. If I want to get the U.S. states data in that projection, I can export that data. And instead of saying use the data's layer source, I can say pick a projection that's the same as the data frame or the table of contents. And then I'm just going to put this on the desktop as an example folder. And I'm going to have to put it, so this is not going into a file or a geodatabase. I'm going to save it as a shape file. So I have to choose shape file, and this is states. Okay, oops, hyphen can't do that, _2. Okay. And it's going to ask me, do I want to put it on the map? And if I say yes, one thing I can see right now is that I have some data coming from the R drive, and now I have some data coming from the C drive, because that's where I just sent this data layer. And if I go here and look at properties again, I can see that my states 2 is now in a different projection. Okay? So that's one way you can reproject data. Another way to reproject data is to put it into a feature data set. So this one, I'm going to export. I'm going to do a really bad thing, and I hope you'll remind me to take it out of here. I'm going to put this in the R drive, GIS, into price, into here. This is in US. And I can't see the geodatabase because this is stuck on shapefile. So I have to change this to geodatabase. And now I can see the geodatabase, and I can put this in a feature data set. So I'm going to open the feature data set, and it says look in the feature data set. I'm going to call this shape stage 3. Oh, somebody's in that, so I can't open that. They won't let me do that. So if I had been able to do that, it would have converted that state file to this projection, the projection that's being used by the data that is in the transportation feature data set. So there's two ways, easy ways to change your projection. One is to export it to a different projection based on the table of contents. The other way is to export your data into a feature data set that has a projection, and that will change the projection, not just on the fly. So I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to move this back to that projection, and Oregon should come. Oh, that's not the projection she had for Oregon. She had, anybody remember what it was? Oh, maybe it was. No, because it wasn't angled. We were straight on. I'll have to look at that. So this is why you do not want to mess with number A. Okay, let me see if I can straighten that up. You know what? I know how to do that. We can confound this thing completely. Let's go to an Oregon projection. State system. Oregon. There we go. So Oregon. So I got the map in a straight up and down orientation. So she has some things that I'm not going to see unless I zoom way in. She has some scaling set, or she has you set some scaling. She also has you look at annotations and different ways to label data. Let me think, what else was I going to show you? Something, I should have left that PowerPoint up so I could figure out, hold on. What was it I wanted to show you? Something else on the, oh, setting your scale. Okay, projecting on the fly and setting your scale. All right, so I'm going to go back to Zoom to Layer, and there's a couple things she has you do in the data view and the layout view. One of them is writing the word, for the exercise, writing the word Pacific Ocean. And she has you do that in layout view. And you go up to the any gray area, and you're going to turn on the drawing tool. And under the drawing tool, beside the letter A, you can pick the spline text, which is this curvy ABC. And if I, let me zoom in on this. Where'd my spline text go again? So I'm going to click that. If I click along the Oregon and Washington coast and double click and type in Pacific, it will curve to match the coast space. So I'm going to make, oh, my caps is on. I'm going to make it italic, redo it. And then I can move this around to meet that. So she's going to have you do that, but that needs to be done in layout view. If you do it in data view, it's going to disappear. So let me try it in data view. I'm going to do this. Watch it turn me into a liar. PAC. And you see how it disappeared? She set the map extent to be only Oregon and Washington. So anything outside of Oregon and Washington does not show up on your data view. So all the rest of the states are here. If I zoom to layer, all the rest of the states are here, all the rest of the roads are here, and she has done that in her, let's see, where did she do that? Data frame property. She clipped that to a shape and excluded some layers. And I'll show you again on Thursday how she did that. So let's say I'm in my map view and I want to make a scale bar. So I'm going to put this back over here. And I'm going to insert my scale bar. And I just like a simple scale bar. I'm going to pull it down here. And let me zoom in here. 75%. move down here. So here's my scale bar. It very nicely showed up at 150 miles, but let's say it, oh, come on. The scale bar is so persnickety. Let's say it was 180 miles when I turned it on. So you can change it by moving the bars, or you can double click it and open the properties, and you can adjust the width. And it says the division is 90 miles, so it has 2 divisions of 90 miles right now. So let's say I just want 2 divisions of 50 miles. So that gives me an even mapping, or maybe I want 3 divisions of 50 miles. Okay. Why would I not have a scale like that? What would be wrong with that? I mean, it's technically right. It's cartographically wrong. You typically don't have a scale the size of the feature that you're mapping. Usually it's somewhat smaller. Okay? So if you have a scale like this and you don't have the bounding bars, then you know that you've got the width adjustment set. And this is the way it will typically come in, and then you can play around with it this way if you want, but it gets really tricky to do that. So those are some things that I think will help you with the lab. The other thing she has you do is under the labels box, she has you set define classes in your labels so that large volcanoes get labeled one way, small volcanoes get labeled another way. And that's a really useful tool when you're working through the data. Okay, so last little piece here is rivers. Are rivers mapped right now as a feature, as a unique value, or colors, or quantitative? That was so not clear. So here they are. So I've got rivers, and if I look at the properties under the symbology, rivers are all mapped the same. It's just saying, show me where the rivers are, give them one quantity, one color category. I could map counties that way. Right now, counties are mapped as quantities graduated color, and they're mapped by density. But I could just map them as one single feature. So there's Oregon, Washington as just the counties. So it's really an interesting idea sometimes to go in here and play with options. Is there anything in here that I could use to map Oregon and Washington categorically? I don't think so. I don't see any categories in here. Nope, this is all just quantitative or nominal data. So basically, she's going to have you go through making this map, and then she's going to have you go through for part 3, making 2 maps on your own that I hope you'll take a lot of these ideas for cartography and layout and put them in the exercise maps. So everybody at the end of the tutorial is going to have a map that looks like everybody else's if you do it right. I'm not so locked into using the colors that she uses, so I think she defaults to that color scheme, and I am fine if you pick a different color scheme. Okay, that doesn't bother me because that's not my favorite. Oh, I know the last thing I wanted to talk about here is in your labels property. This is too many decimals. It doesn't make any sense. And so you can click on the labels, go into Format. You can choose No Decimals. And you can also click on the labels, Format Labels, and choose to add the commas. And that makes your label much more readable. The other thing I can do is change the name here. and that will show up when I add this, insert the legend to my box. So it takes the name that I gave that, will now be added. And in my legends, I can go to frame, I can add a border, I can add a color, which helps, especially if I'm putting it over something else. But I can also add some gaps in here that will move the data away from the edge of my bounding box on my legend, which also makes it more readable. So lots of stuff you can do. You're going to make absolutely beautiful maps with this one. Okay?